The beginning of Kingdom Hearts 1 is my all-time favourite start to the numerous titles within the series. It perfectly captures the tone of which the game represents, along with a not too lengthy but decently paced tutorial segment, giving good examples of the main cast and setting up what kind of game this is. A Disney action RPG with Square flair intertwined, portraying that yes, there are light-hearted moments, the Disney flavour is apparent, but with darker segments thrown in, something akin to which you'd find in a Final Fantasy title. It's these flavours combining that create the sense of curiosity, which I think is hence the reason so many initially latched onto this game. There's a lot of mystery, like who are these kids and why are they special? How is Disney going to fit into a game that resembles a very obvious Square title? And what's with an oversized key being a weapon about? It was vital that Square had to make a compelling start to this new IP in order to captivate the player so that they'd want these kinds of questions answered. Because at first, the idea of Disney meeting halfway with a JRPG setup seems like a disaster waiting to happen. After all, Disney was only known for its games from Disney Interactive during the time, and although some of these were actually really good, especially a lot that released during the N64 and PlayStation 1 era, something like this was completely new ground, and you could imagine just how many at the time were likely saying, this just isn't going to work. Skip forward almost 20 years later and Kingdom Hearts is now one of, if not the most popular, Disney video game series, as well as one of Square Enix's flagship IPs. It's received over 10 installments, a plethora of merchandise, you can seriously buy Kingdom Hearts cutlery, this is where we're at. Numerous orchestra performances, a little bit of recognition at Disney theme parks, and an extremely dedicated fanbase. A lot of this is thanks to the success of the very first game, and undeniably the sequel that released years later, taking its gameplay formula to the next level. Today, I want to discuss why I believe the beginning of Kingdom Hearts 1 is perfect. We start the game off with an impressive CG cutscene. Even to this day, the visuals of this look amazing. It was something Square were known for during the time, thanks to Final Fantasy X. What made this opening so memorable though was certainly Utada Hikaru's Simple and Clean, the Planet B remix. With its upbeat vibe and club banger feel, this made literally anyone playing during the time, whether adult or child, shake several legs. The visuals though focus on the three key characters, Sora, Riku, and Kairi, with a lot of what is actually happening going on. Why is he not fazed about the tidal wave behind him? Okay, now he's drowning. Wait, what the f***? He's still there holding out his hand. Okay, don't worry, he's fine, he's resurfaced, but like how long's he been underwater for? It's now sunset. This man went for a dip during mid-daylight. Wait, the same kid has seen himself fall from the sky. Hold on a minute, now he's fallen back into the ocean, which is actually the sky, then falls into the ocean. What the f*** is this game, bro? Is that f***ing Snow White? What is happening? If this isn't the best way to introduce a new IP, one that is a Disney game, I don't know what is. It creates a massive sense of curiosity, leaving most with a need to know more, and perfectly displays what kind of madness you're about to throw yourself into. Strap up, kids! You're here for the long haul! We begin with arriving where the cutscene ended, on a stained glass pillar of Snow White. Okay? With these podiums rising from the ground containing three different weapons, a shield, staff, and sword, all containing the Mickey Mouse icon. There's also this ominous dialogue rolling throughout that's acting as a guide of sorts, speaking to Sora, mentioning how he's special and is chosen. This is never really made overly obvious, but it's actually Mickey himself speaking to Sora during his dive to Heart, setting the course of events in motion towards Sora becoming the wielder of the Kingdom Key. This influence of Mickey is likely why the Dream weapons have the Mickey icon on them. From here, it's up to you what weapon you'll harness the power of, and what one you'll give up in exchange. Already, the RPG tropes are hitting hard. We're off to a good start. Depending on your decision, it will affect the order in which you receive abilities as you level up, and what stats will become prioritized. Each of the three numbered Kingdom Hearts games have this beginning, where you decide what power you want and what one you'll give up in exchange. But Kingdom Hearts 1 was certainly the most impactful for me personally, having to jump up on the podium and stand under a ray of light, like the decision you're about to make is the most important of your life, and being able to briefly use the chosen weapon for the Dive to Heart segment. The dream weapons appeared again in Kingdom Hearts 2, but Roxas never actually wielded them in the Station of Awakening, and in Kingdom Hearts 3 the use of picture frames from Sora's memories were used instead. From a lore standpoint, that makes sense, as Sora's already been through this decision of what weapon to use and give up, but man, do I miss the dream weapons in the third game. Once you've chosen your desired setup, the glass beneath shatters, initially leading my child brain into thinking, wait, holy shit, did I just make the wrong decision? With Sora floating down onto another pillar, this time of Cinderella. We get the rundown of how combat works with our introduction to the Heartless. And yes, even though these little guys are actually kinda cute, these really are the kinds of things you'd come across in a Night Terror. I remember being scared of these things for months after playing this game for the first time. And to also see these weird demon-looking shadow creatures on top of a stained glass of a Disney princess is again adding to the what the fuck is going on factor. Once you've learned how to swing your stick, Sora's yet again pulled away, drowning in darkness. Okay, seriously, what is going on? We now find ourselves on a pink stained glass containing silhouettes of other Disney princesses, with a strange transparent door. This part gives us the rundown on interacting with things in the world, like examining and opening treasure chests, learning how to push and pick up boxes. Can you actually imagine being sent into your own heart and a mouse is teaching you how to pick up a barrel and push a crate? Okay, I'm sorry, saying that out loud just sounds ridiculous. Once the door is restored, Sora steps through and finds himself in Destiny Islands, with a mysterious voice asking to explain a bit about yourself, like, okay Mickey, what is this, a job interview? I like long walks on the beach, I'm lactose intolerant, onesies my go-to style, I often dribble in my sleep, and I'm massively allergic to grass. We're immediately greeted with 3 Final Fantasy characters, Tidus and Wakka from Final Fantasy X, and Selphie from Final Fantasy VIII. Although I didn't have any Final Fantasy experience at the time of playing Kingdom Hearts for the first time, as this was literally my first video game, I can only imagine how mind-bending it would have been being a fan of Final Fantasy, seeing these characters in a Disney game, and to also see how they're represented with a younger, more cartoonier look. Each of these characters will ask you a different question, with being able to choose from 3 different answers. And these questions are deep, man, like Wakka asking, what do you want out of life? Like, I was 5 when I first played this, so like, I don't know, dude, a Star Wars Lego set? Selphie asking, what's most important to you? Definitely my Tonka truck. And Tidus asking, what are you so afraid of?
The monster's under my bed!
Depending on the choice of your answers, you're given a different dialogue result as to when your journey begins, and it's different depending on the average of the choice of answers. Your journey can begin at dawn, midday, or in the dead of night. Choosing mostly top answers will result in dawn, mostly middle answers in midday, and bottom for the dead of night. The result will actually end up impacting the game in regards to how much XP will be required for a level up. Dawn will result in you leveling up quicker for the first 50 levels, but slower for the other 50. Midday will cause you to level up evenly throughout, and Dead of Night leveling slower for the first 50, but faster for the other 50. This is the only Kingdom Hearts game to have this system, and to be fair, while I like this idea of the characters asking you these questions, I am glad this never returned. It's certainly something among a numerous amount of other things, though, that make Kingdom Hearts 1 unique to the rest. Once your decisions have been made, Sora yet again finds himself on another stained glass. This time it's Aurora, Sleeping Beauty. At this point, you've noticed the Disney princess theme of these glass pillars, which doesn't become apparent as to why until later on in the game, with the princesses being vital to accessing Kingdom Hearts, with needing the hearts of the 7 princesses of light, all of which are Disney characters, with the exception of one. What I like about this is you probably wouldn't click with the connection to the glass pillars until you'd find yourself playing through the game a second time. It's a nice little hint hint, nudge nudge, to insinuate the coming story. We then get our first proper combat scenario, with the music picking up into its battle theme version. The theme that plays during the dive to heart is Distasi, which is just so perfect to portray the absolute unknown of what is going on, and really helps encompass that ominous feeling of where Sora has found himself. Of course, massive props to the legendary Yoko Shimomura. After giving the Ants of Darkness the smackaroo, we learn about the save point, but what I really like is how Square integrates the save point into the scenario, with this beam of light shining down from the darkness above to create a ring of light on the floor. And once you've stepped into the save point, a circle of light moves forward from out of the save point to create a stained glass pathway up to the final pillar. This sequence of running across the pathway up to that pillar is simply legendary, and certainly goes down as one of the most iconic sequences in the series. You could say that this sequence is stained into my head. Get it? Cause, you know, it's stained glass. Okay. It's alright. It's okay, I'll see myself out. You guys don't have to tell me twice. I'll see myself out. Sora rising up to his potential to prove that he's capable of being chosen by the Keyblade. I'm not even going to script this part, I'm just going to straight freeform it. So Sora finds himself on the final pillar, which is of Belle, Beauty and the Beast. And I really like this little touch because one of the final worlds of Kingdom Hearts 1, Hollow Bastion, you end up teaming up with Beast to of course try save Belle. It's a nice little touch. When Sora steps into the center of the platform, we get this dialogue: the closer you get to light, the greater your shadow becomes, with Sora's literal shadow behind him coming to life. This is hands down some of the spookiest 5-year-old me ever experienced. We got Mickey out here trying to like calm us down as the players, being like, well, don't be afraid. Like, Mickey, boy, what do you think this is? I am shitting myself right now. I have to fight myself, which then turns into this giant manifestation of darkness with noodle hair. This thing is f***ing massive! Don't be afraid! I'm still out here pooping my pants and you're telling me not to be afraid. This singular moment of Kingdom Hearts 1 is just something else. There are plenty of amazing tutorial segments within video games, but the one that Kingdom Hearts 1 has right here really is in a realm of its own. Now, the fight itself is nowhere near as scary as the cutscene that plays beforehand, but yeah, we then have to face off against the darkside. For anyone that ended up playing this as a kid, you can probably relate, but this really is one of the absolute most heart-racing scenarios of like all time. For a 2002 experience, man, this was just absolutely wild. Although I said that this fight itself really isn't hard, because it's not, I admittedly had to get one of my mum's 45-year-old friends to actually help me out with this segment. I think it was mainly because I was trembling in absolute fear during the time. And just keeping in mind that this was my introduction to video games, I have to say, wow, what an introduction. Once the darkside has been defeated, Sora finds himself yet again drowning in darkness. This seems to be a bit of a theme here, with the dialogue explaining that he holds the mightiest weapon and that he'll be the one to open the door, giving us a sense of importance towards Sora. He then wakes up on the beach of Destiny Islands, awoken by Kairi giving him a jump scare. Whoa! And explains he just had the craziest dream, leading us to believe, at the time, okay, did that just happen? But little did we know. Kairi explains that she doesn't remember her homeworld, telling us she isn't from the islands, which later connects to the plot, especially within the prequel Birth by Sleep. Kairi wanting to go see where she came from sets in motion the idea of the gang wanting to leave their world to go explore others, which is how this massive adventure begins. We get the introduction of Riku, who is clearly eavesdropping on the two talking, as he just comes out of nowhere holding a log to build a raft, which, by the way, he just plants on Sora. Thanks for that, Riku. So that's our mission, to build a raft to go to the outside worlds. I really can't believe these kids thought building a raft was going to get them into outer space. Bless the innocence of these youngins. The gang then race down the beach to build the raft and roll logo cue. Kingdom Hearts has begun. We also get to hear the absolutely boppin' Destiny Islands theme. This music is simply delicious. For day one of our raft preparation, we're given a small list of things from Kairi to acquire. 2 logs, 1 cloth, 1 rope, all of which can be found in the main beach area we're able to explore. What I enjoy so much about Kingdom Hearts 1's prologue is that it's so different compared to other Kingdom Hearts games. KH2 certainly had one that stood out due to starting as a completely new character. And sure, it had some unique situations, like the jobs you would have to do to raise money to go to the beach, or the 7 Wonders and the Struggle Tournament, but it mainly just consists of combat scenarios. I mean, which is fine, it's an action RPG after all. Birth by Sleep had a small training section in the Land of Departure. Dream Drop Distance throws you into a fight with Ursula straight off the bat and teaches you the further mechanics in Traverse Town. Kingdom Hearts 3 was quick and snappy with a brief dive to Heart and Final World segment, then teaching you the rest in Olympus. But out of the bunch, none of them come close to the charm that Kingdom Hearts 1 provided during its prologue. Before you run off and collect all of what's required though, you're able to do a little exploring, which is highly recommended. Like, how can you not take in the absolute beauty that is Destiny Islands? The sea, the sun, the sand, and you're telling me the kids would boat out here every single day just to use this island as their special hangout spot? Hello? Best I had when I was a child was a makeshift hut with 2 sheets and a log riddled with hoo-hoo grubs set up in the gully of a primary school, so these guys are doing alright. But you're able to talk to the kids who are hanging around, Selphie, Waka, Titus, and Riku, all of which you can challenge to a duel on the beach, granting you XP if you defeat them, and further XP if you can deflect their attacks. If you really wanted to spend a few hours here before diving into the meat of the game, you could try to rack up a few levels before the main game starts. Out of the 4 of them though, the Big Daddy challenge was Riku. Titus even makes this apparent during day 2 with saying that Riku whooped all 3 of them at once. We'll see about that.
What are you afraid of?
Oh, come on, dude, that's some cheese tactics. Yeah, that's more like it. It was definitely a thing when I was younger, going around to a friend's house, that if you could defeat Riku, you were some kind of bona fide badass. What's neat is there's a score that's kept track between Sora and Riku as to who's winning between the two, and this counts across both the duel and race on day 2. Having this kind of inbuilt system builds on the fact that there's a very clear rivalry between the two. Seriously though, Destiny Islands is gorgeous. I'd make sure to have a specific save file that would load me into the seaside shack so that whenever I wanted to indulge in the island's beauty, I could. Whether that meant dipping Sora's shoes in the waterfall pond, going for a quick swim in the sea, climbing trees. You can climb trees in this game. It's the only Kingdom Hearts game that allows you to climb trees. This is extremely important and is one of the major factors as to why this prologue is the best. Like, why hasn't this returned? I'll never know. And with the direction that the story has gone, I guess it hasn't really been overly too necessary to ever return to the island for a proper world setup. But I mean, come on, why would you not want to expand on this square? You showed us a small slice of the main island in Kingdom Hearts 2, just let me explore! We then see a cutscene of the gang hanging out at the end of the day, talking about visiting other worlds, with Sora asking the real question of how far can a raft take us? And Riku following up with, if we have to come up with something else, then we will. Boy, do you understand that if this raft goes topsy-turvy, that's it. You're done. You've got one shot. There won't be any time to think of a plan B, C, D, E, F, G. You're done. But this cutscene mainly talks about the reasonings behind why they want to visit other worlds, to know what else is out there. Riku thanks Kairi specifically for arriving in Destiny Islands, as if it wasn't for her, Riku would never have had the need to want to know what else lies beyond their own world. I absolutely love this shot of Sora while Riku's thanking Kairi. It almost looks like Sora's rolling his eyes towards Riku buttering up. It's absolutely great. This is also setting up the kind of relationships these guys all have with one another, especially towards the individual relationships they have towards Kairi. We see a cutscene after day 2 is wrapped up of Kairi and Sora talking on the dock, which shows us Kairi's softness towards Sora, telling him to never change, and even jokingly suggesting that just the 2 of them should take the raft and leave Riku in the dust. I am so sorry, my man. This cutscene specifically hits hard. It's the final conversation these 2 have before they're both ripped away from their world. Riku and Kairi's relationship is a little different compared to Sora's. It's quite clear that Kairi has a soft spot for Sora, whereas Riku seems to use a possible interest in Kairi to build on that rivalry he has with Sora. This kind of back and forth rival behavior certainly gets less intense as the games continue, which is due to the group maturing. No question about it, Riku and Kairi have a very strong friendship, but it's apparent throughout Kingdom Hearts 1 that there are certain things that Riku does towards Kairi in order to get under Sora's skin. I really do feel like I'm out here trying to prove some kind of point towards shipping. I am so sorry. This is also where we get the Palpu fruit introduction, which turns out to be a special object that reappears throughout the series, and is even mirrored when looking at the purpose of Aqua's charms she gives to Terra and Ventus in Birth by Sleep. It explains that if you share a Palpu with someone, you'll remain in their lives no matter what. Their destinies become intertwined. Riku ends up giving one to Sora as a way of sort of mocking him. I really do enjoy the dynamic between these two in Kingdom Hearts 1. It's honestly unlike their relationship in any of the other games, and is evidence of their age during their first adventure. We're then greeted with the Disney introduction, the grand cutscene of Disney Castle, showing us that Mickey is someone of great importance, being that of a king, because of course he is, and that Donald and Goofy are his loyal guards. The scene of Donald walking into the throne room to greet Mickey, then suddenly realizing he's missing, continuing to then read the note Mickey left, then running out of the room screaming down the corridor is just perfection. It really is one of the funniest scenes in the series and portrays that Disney humor is still apparent in this game, as this is exactly something Donald Duck would do if we were actually watching a Disney short. We then start day 2. This time we're able to explore the other side of the island. We have to collect more supplies for the raft, but this time with a focus on food. We're required to get 1 seagull egg, 3 mushrooms, 2 coconuts, 3 fish, and some drinking water, but not from the ocean. This amount of food will last you a total of maybe a few days at best, but I mean, who am I to complain? Carry on as you were. Before being able to collect the provisions, we have to challenge Riku to a race to decide on what the name of the raft will be. Again, I love this. You just don't find this in any of the other games. It's up to us as to what we want to call the raft, and fun fact, in the original PS2 version, you could name the raft whatever you wanted, no censoring, but since the HD Remix version, Square made it so that you couldn't use vulgar language. Why are you suppressing my creativity, Square? This does affect what the name of the gummy ship will end up being, so if you win, it's the name you chose, or if Riku wins, it's Highwind. On top of that, Sora mentions that if he wins, he's captain, with Riku quickly intervening, mentioning that if he wins, he shares the Palpu with Kairi. Like, okay bro, didn't know it was that serious, jeez. So yeah, the winner gets to share a Palpu with Kairi, so for the sake of our boy Sora, you better hope to win. Which, let's be real, 95% of us first playing this game lost. I'm so sorry Sora, we let you down. Hey, but don't worry. We got Kingdom Hearts 3. The race is about making sure to take the fastest path, and most of us would first assume that using the zip line up the top of the wooden tower is the quickest way, but because of the time it takes to climb up, it's actually the slowest. Rather, you're best to drop down to the beach below and follow the path up to the star and leapfrog your way across the treetops. This was some hard stuff as a kid, and I remember trying over and over again just to get the satisfaction of rubbing the idea of Sora and Kairi sharing the Palpu in Riku's face. But by the time I took the win, the score was already 1-86. Oh yeah, and please raise your hand in the room if you've stepped on the loose piece of wood across the bridge and fell down onto the sand below. That's literally everyone? Alright. It's just what I thought. You're now free to collect the provisions. The seagull egg can be found on top of this tree, which requires you to climb up this palm tree to jump on top of. The 3 fish can be found in the ocean. The coconuts, oh god, the coconuts, can be obtained by smacking the trees with the thick trunks. I don't know if the drop rates were changed for the remix versions, but I swear it used to take me a millennia for these bad boys to drop, as they have to be the greeny yellow ones. 1 mushroom will be hiding behind a rock you have to push out of the way, like we have to actually push this rock. This is next-gen stuff for Kingdom Hearts. You don't see this anymore. 1 by the wooden tower and 1 in the secret place. Upon collecting this mushroom, you'll encounter a cutscene with the Candy Man, yabbing on that the world has been connected, foreshadowing future events, and it turns out that this is the game's primary antagonist. kinda saw that one coming. Again though, I love the mystery it adds. Why is he wearing this stinky, creepy old robe? What nonsense is he talking about? And what is that door? Lastly, the fresh water can be obtained by standing in either the waterfall just outside of the entrance to the secret place, or the waterfall near the wooden bridge on the other side of the island. Before you wrap up the day, there's one last thing you'll want to do, and that's opening the only treasure chest on the island, containing a protect chain, which can be handy for the early game. I love that you have to pick up the crate to be able to jump up to the ledge where the chest is. While this is, of course, optional, it's really the only time the pickup mechanic is ever actually needed to be used. We then see a cutscene of what Mickey wrote in his letter, explaining that big trouble is brewing due to stars going out, and that he's left to look into it. Donald and Goofy's mission is to travel to a world known as Traverse Town, find Leon, and search for a boy with a key, as that's the key to survival, setting up the events for Sora, Donald, and Goofy to cross paths. We get the introduction of Jiminy Cricket from Pinocchio, whose world has been lost, who also accompanies Donald and Goofy, keeping track of the adventures, acting as the numbered titled entries game stats system, which I absolutely love, paying homage to Jiminy's role in his respective movie. Seeing Donald and Goofy leaving their homeworld was nice too, to see how Chip and Dale were integrated being the Gummy Ship engineers, and how these guys are able to travel to different worlds, those worlds being of course the Disney properties. If you were to read the premise of the roles these Disney characters were playing on paper, it would certainly be hard to understand how this was all going to flow, but somehow Square managed to make this work really well, with it all making sense, at least most of the time. We then cut back to Destiny Islands, with Sora lying on his bed at night. He notices a storm brewing. Huge ball of darkness swallowing the world wasn't on today's weather forecast. He panics about the raft possibly being destroyed and makes his way to the island. This scene is also the only time in the entirety of the series that Sora's mother has any involvement, calling him for dinner. This is hilarious because you often don't think that these guys have parents. I mean, they're off saving worlds from the threat of literal manifestations of darkness, of being dubbed as chosen ones, yet they all have normal lives. I suppose once Sora returned home at the end of Kingdom Hearts 2, he pretty much just gave his mum the rundown of what's been going on over the past year and a bit, and explained to her, well, this is how things are now, get used to it. We arrive on Destiny Islands in the dead of night, having to track down Kairi and Riku, with first finding Riku over on the Paupu Island. As we're trying to make our way there though, Sora will be attacked by Shadow Heartless, and because we're equipped with a literal wooden sword, we can't do much. Sora finally makes it to Riku, and straight off the bat, Riku is speaking some complete malarkey, talking about how the door is open and that they're able to travel to other worlds. Riku goes on about how he's not afraid of the darkness and opens his heart to accepting it, slowly fading away. The big best friend is turning to the darkside scene, which all of us knew that inevitably we're going to have to knock some sense into Daniel Darkness over here at some point. I like that during this time Riku holds his hand out to Sora, just like we saw during the CG intro with the tidal wave hitting the two of them, then being swooped underwater. Sora desperately trying to reach Riku but then being pushed back by the current. This very beginning scene depicts Riku's fall to darkness, with Sora being torn away to be put on his own path. As Riku is getting sucked into the vacuum of darkness, as is Sora for a brief moment. But just before Big Shoe McGee gets the big munch, a big flash of light appears, and the keyblade falls into Sora's hands.
Yeah, we now have the weapon that's on the front of the cover, the big key, the big key. It's ours. We've got the key. Nice.
This is a pivotal moment in the series, as the Kingdom Key was supposed to choose Riku rather than Sora, but in this moment of weakness from Riku accepting the darkness into his heart, the Keyblade had a change of mind, and rather decided to choose Sora. So long, Wooden Sword, we now have the big boy license, and it's open season for the Shadow Heartless, as we can give them the ultimate clap. This is a pretty good time to get some extra XP too if you feel like cleaning up the beach a little due to there being countless spawns of these things, and to maybe pick up a few potions in the hope that they actually drop. The shadows aren't endless though, but there's a decent amount here. Once you finish giving your car key a test swing, you'll notice the same door that appeared in the Dive to Heart is now at the entrance of the secret place. Upon entering, you'll stumble across a very out of it Kairi staring at the door, with the door then flying open to further envelop the world into darkness, and Kairi flying straight into Sora. No, quite literally. This is the moment she enters into Sora's heart, but we don't find out about that until much later on in the game. What I like about Kingdom Hearts 1 is in that very first hour, there are a ton of different breadcrumbs that are dropped that later on get more context, that get built upon. For later on in the game itself, or for other Kingdom Hearts games, more context is given. After being forced out of the cave by 100-mile winds, Sora wakes up on the last slither of Destiny Islands, only to be greeted by Lord Noodlehead a second time. Insert the Ralph Wiggums meme. So if the shadows weren't proof enough, this absolutely confirms Sora's suspicion on if any of this is for real or not. Because yeah, he's looking pretty f***ing real right now. It's the same fight as before, just with the big boy being able to pull off a new move. But this time we have the keyblade. So not much can go wrong. Once smacking this thing over for a second time, by the way, this isn't the last time we'll see this clown. The rest of the world is swallowed by the darkness, with Sora included. The track that plays during this segment is known as Night of Fate, which is absolutely so fitting as this is the turning point for Sora, Kairi, and Riku, and everything that is about to transpire. Catching back up with Donald and Goofy, who have now arrived in Traverse Town, they look up into the sky and notice a star has gone out. Relating back to what was in Mickey's letter, this lets us know a star going out means that a world has been consumed by the darkness. So if stars are going out all over the place, then, oh, right, yeah, that's dark. Well, I guess this is a state of emergency. As they make their way into town to search for Sora and Leon, Goofy suggests to look down the alleyway as Pluto has quite clearly picked up a scent. And my god, I love this part. Donald completely shuts Goofy down, calling him a big palooka, even with Goofy questioning himself on what he knows. Man, I love the dynamic of these two. It's absolutely fantastic, as it's pretty much unchanged from their source. Square really did nail it. We wake up to dog breath, and Sora finds himself in a new world. Is that a Final Fantasy Moogle? Titus, you made it too. Wait, no, that's just the bootleg version. If you talk to some of the people standing around, they mention how they too also wound up in Traverse Town due to their worlds being consumed by darkness, meaning that Traverse Town is a refuge for those who lost their homes. And the Traverse Town theme just captures this perfectly. I mean, the jazzy, warm, cozy vibe, it gives you this homely feel. So already with the Destasi music, the Destiny Islands theme, Night of Fate, and now Traverse Town, you know that the soundtrack of this game is going to be phenomenal. Upon exploring around, you'll end up walking into the accessory shop, only to be greeted by yet another Final Fantasy character, Sid from Final Fantasy VII. It's a bit of a joke throughout FF7 that Sid is an old man due to his age compared to the rest of the group. It's strange though, because in fact Barrett's actually the oldest, being 35, but I digress. This is followed up here in Kingdom Hearts with Sora calling Sid Gramps. Fantastic. Sid explains to Sora that this is Traverse Town and that if he ever runs into trouble to come see him. Aw Sid, you sweetie. Once making it into the second district, we witness the birth of a Heartless, with the civilian actually dying in front of our eyes, and their heart leaving the body to spawn a soldier Heartless. Good lord. From here the game wants you to explore around, with no real obvious sense of direction. However, entering into the hotel, gizmo shop, and alleyway areas will trigger a small cutscene of Donald and Goofy arriving where you just were, to make it feel like you guys are on this wild goose chase. So close, yet so far. You'll eventually make your way back into the first district, but notice now that Heartless are everywhere. Entering and then exiting the accessory shop will lead you to finally crossing paths with Leon, the star child of Final Fantasy VIII. Though this encounter starts off a little rough, with Leon wanting to test Sora, we're pitted against a slap battle. The game doesn't expect you to win here, as unless you've leveled up a tad or you're an MLG Lord, most will fail during their first attempt, as Leon has some high damage for the time. Another thing I liked about Kingdom Hearts 1 is that there are so many moments throughout where there can be two different outcomes depending on winning or losing, and also depending on your progression towards Hollow Bastion, if certain worlds haven't been visited beforehand, something that's never really returned again for the series. If you do win, you'll receive a nice 30 XP as well as an elixir from Leon after defeating the guard armor. The cutscene will be slightly different, with Leon fumbling to his knee and Sora passing out from exhaustion, with Yuffie appearing from Final Fantasy VII, mocking Leon on how he's slipping. You get him, girl! Within this first hour, we already have so many different Final Fantasy cameos, from 7, 8, and 10, along with the most iconic Disney cast. Square really did want to make it apparent straight off the bat that this is indeed two creative forces merging together. We get a glimpse of what happened to Riku, waking up in what seems to be a different world than where Sora found himself. The camera pans away and holy shit, is that Maleficent from Walt Disney Pictures' Sleeping Beauty? Rolling back to Donald and Goofy's whereabouts, they're still on the hunt for the boy, when suddenly Donald gets the duck poo scared out of him by Aerith. Literally, Aerith from Final Fantasy VII scared the shit out of Donald Duck. I can't believe that sentence came out of my mouth, and saying it out loud sounds like some kind of wacky fan fiction, but we are in a timeline where this is very real. Bless you, Square. Sora wakes up in the hotel seeing Kairi at first, but turns out to be a hallucination. Likely due to him passing out, but also because of Kairi's influence on Sora's heart. Sora is yet again greeted by Leon and Yuffie, who give him the rundown on the Heartless and how Sora has been chosen by the Keyblade to be its wielder, letting us know that these two already have knowledge on such weapon and the current happenings of the worlds. At the same time, right next door, Aerith is explaining to Donald and Goofy who Ansem is and how his reports that he had written contains vital information on the Heartless due to researching them, but the pages of this report had been scattered throughout numerous worlds. Goofy mentions that they should probably find these pages, and in this instance, Donald literally breaks the fourth wall by grabbing the camera and saying how they need to find the key first. Again, that Disney humor staying apparent, and a good way of showing what the current focus should be. Before long, the Heartless seek out Sora, with Yuffie running into the next room, slamming the door straight into Donald. God, I love this nonsense! Leon explains to Sora that he needs to find the Heartless leader. Once making your way into the 3rd district, Donald and Goofy appear on a balcony above, surrounded by 2 soldier Heartless, and get their ass beat, being yeeted to down below, with Sora breaking their fall. We did it! They've found each other! A small wave of Heartless appear, and once defeated, Big Daddy-O guard armor turns up. This is the first proper boss fight of the game, and can be slightly challenging if you're playing on Proud due to the damage it can inflict, or if you don't have enough potions on hand. Due to now having party members, this gives you the first proper taste of action and what to expect with encounters from here on out. The three then exchange their current situations, with Donald and Goofy explaining to Sora that they were trying to find him and that Sora is looking for his missing friends, Riku and Kairi. Although they seem skeptical at first, with bringing Sora with them to travel to other worlds in search of Sora's friends, with Donald essentially lying to him in the beginning only to make Sora come with them, as they need him to track down the king. Donald does follow up with how there's to be no frowning or sad faces, and Sora pulling the biggest Colgate smile you've seen, eventually agreeing to go with them. This is the start of a very beautiful friendship. We then see what is one of my favorite cutscenes in the series, the amazing villain setup, showing us silhouettes of Hades, Ursula, Oogie Boogie, Captain Hook, and Jafar, with Maleficent in charge, standing around a table with a vision of Sora, Donald, and Goofy, who had just whooped the Heartless's ass. This did a great job of displaying who we'll be facing off against throughout the game, and if you knew your Disney well enough, you'd be able to point out who's who and what worlds you should expect to visit. Even though, in the end, the primary antagonist of the game isn't any of these Disney characters, Kingdom Hearts 1 did such a perfect job of giving the Disney aspect so much justice, with really making the Disney characters integral to the plot. The villains, the worlds, the princesses, and the setup with Mickey, Donald, and Goofy just worked so well, and honestly hasn't quite reached the same feeling since. And to see all these familiar characters squabbling together, standing in the same room, talking about the Keyblade and other fantasy nonsense, really is something out of a dream. Finally, we have a goodbye and good luck from Leon, Yuffie, and Aerith, who kindly give us some kickstart money to spend. Donald and Goofy give us some goodies, the fire magic and dodge roll, with a rundown on abilities. Before long, we exit the main gate of Traverse Town and our massive journey to the outside worlds begin, kickstarting what is only the first slice in an adventure that would go on to span multiple different installments, and to this day still eagerly awaiting the return to Sora's oversized shoes, to witness his journey in the world of fiction, Quadratum. The beginning of Kingdom Hearts is simply perfect, and captured the essence of what Kingdom Hearts is about in such a unique, wild, and wacky way. If this first game hadn't have been executed in the way it was, Kingdom Hearts could have very well have been a one and done thing, known as that weird Disney X Final Fantasy RPG from Square's catalog during the early 2000s. It was a game that was bound to fail miserably on paper, but somehow stole the attention of so many, and truly became one of Tetsuya Nomura's shining achievements.
I've been having these weird thoughts lately. Like, is any of this for real? Or not?